Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. Just having some mushroom tea, legal mushrooms, herbal medicine from the Thai forests. Lowers blood pressure, gets rid of cholesterol, just kind of basically detox kind of thing. It's a bit bitter, so I put some honey in it. That's the thing, isn't it? Medicine, it's one of those, it's a bitter pill. Just like Flat Earth is a bitter pill to swallow, but it is medicine. It's medicine for the soul, and it frees your mind. I wish there was a way to explain to people who come along and kind of try and just outright deny that there's any possibility that people have been lying to us for profit or for other ulterior motives. Yeah, it's very difficult to convey what happens in your head when you do truly examine what you believe and why you believe it and how you became to believe that the way things are is just some kind of natural evolution of us being people on this planet. So, you know, that's the thing, isn't it? Flat Earth is so much more than just trying to define the shape of the Earth. And although that's all good in itself, and obviously people are working towards that, what's so special and inspiring about the whole Flat Earth thing is this collection of individuals, each with a skill or a passion or experience in various fields, that if they apply themselves and make a contribution with their knowledge, and then it helps everyone get a much bigger picture of everything in general. And so I suppose people that have looked into a lot of the conspiracy theories, I'm sure many of us would have had certain theories at certain times or believed certain people at certain times about what's maybe going on with the moon or aliens or lizards, all this kind of thing. I mean, if someone has something to say about an experience they've had, then they're worth listening to. If you haven't had that experience or you cannot relate to it, well, that's understandable because you're not them, you're not that person. But isn't that the idea of us being able to communicate and share ideas, and especially now with technology and YouTube? It's not about being egotistical, I don't think. I'm going to have to change my battery. Hang on a sec. Okay, so apart from defining the shape of the Earth, it is obviously a very contentious issue, and the reaction you get from many people, obviously most of them Westerners, you notice that we don't have many Asians really arguing about Flat Earth. It's all Westerners that have been influenced by this culture of science or scientism. It has to be pointed out, although all Flat Earthers try to explain this to newbies that come along, especially new people who understand maths and physics and they enjoy that aspect, and it allows one to understand the workings of the universe. So it's quite satisfying, isn't it, really, to have some answers as to the kind of how things work, and it makes sense to a certain extent. But we've got this separation, science is science and religion is religion and what have you. And of course what's happened is, over time we've been repeatedly told that, for example, mathematics is the language of the universe because it's fact. And you see this mathematics being associated with science, which is obviously a necessity if you want to describe the effect of forces, impacts or whatever, waves, distances, times. Of course, mathematics is an essential part of describing a physical phenomenon. So yes, they are interlinked, and they do seem to perfectly well describe everything that we see and do and that happens around us to a certain extent, until you get to the why of it all. And of course, this is perceived as being some completely separate subject, to do with religion, which, where science doesn't go. Although science does try to, or scientism, heliocentrism, does try to explain to a certain extent where we all came from, how we all got here, the Big Bang, balls collecting and spinning, and eventually, suns coming from wherever they came from, and all this matter in the universe ending up as being balls, and we just happen to spin around the sun, and it's, in this Goldilocks zone, and then we evolved from a primordial stew, etc. But of course, even science or scientists have to ponder the question of how it all got here and why it's all here. And there is no real answer. And even religion cannot give you those answers. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, okay, although it's understood that mathematics in of itself, geometry, trigonometry, all these things are perfect in of themselves, and they can be manipulated, and they can describe many things as well as science does, the shape of the earth and the idea that science totally dictates everything that we see in the heliocentric model is a false connection. It's another step. It's actually a step. It's taking science and mathematics into the realms of religion, because then you're trying to use it to explain how everything came about. And of course, you just end up getting lost in these equations and string theories and what have you, and half a dozen theories about what happened before the Big Bang. And of course, you can then try and go back, but you still eventually end up with the chicken and egg scenario. And that, that cannot be answered by any of us here. Nobody knows for sure where the moon came from, where the earth came from, why the sun shines. Of course, we can theorize, but, we can never really know for sure. And I think the first thing a lot of flat earthers do is, they start asking those questions that might have once kind of been in our heads, but they seem to have been answered already, like how far away is the sun? How big is the sun? And you start looking, and if you're looking from a fresh newbie perspective, or you had some idea about the distance or size of the sun and how it was worked out, but never really looked into it, you start looking and you find out about Eratosthenes, and you can immediately see that assumptions had to be made in order to create formula or a foundation for the mathematics. For example, the spherical ball Earth. Got one over here. Hang on. The spherical Earth. This is perfect for the foundations of your mathematical equations. Again, I keep saying, perspective is the curve. So But instead, the perspective was used to say we're on a ball. And this ball, to interact with all the other balls in the planet and have the sun at the center, requires obviously the sun to be big to pull everything around with this idea of gravity. But what you need for gravity is a container for the mass of the Earth. Yeah, mass is the density of something within a container. Density over volume equals mass. So, okay, you have a formula there which describes and can give you a foundation to say, right, okay, if we do some algebra, we can surmise that this ball is this big and it's about this dense with whatever materials they may be, and then we can then therefore plug it into this other thing with inverse square laws and say, okay, it's that far away, so the strength would be this much, but this is this much bigger or smaller, so the difference in the pull would be different, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's understood. We get it. It's understood how the maths can describe. Maths describes physics in this physical world, but then when we step into the realm of trying to use it to describe what we think is happening and how it all works from somewhere that we can't actually see from an outside perspective, we of course can have formula such as geometry or the formula for gravity to describe these things. No flat earthers are denying that things fall to the ground. There is a gravity per se. And okay, if you create an artificial environment like a vacuum, then you can say that things fall at the same rate with no resistance. And you have a speed, you have a rate of acceleration, if you like, and then you can convert it into a force. But it's all conjecture, it really is. So all we have to go on now is a few things. We've got the moon landings, which anyone who really, really looks into it can tell, not just with IQ, but EQ. You have to have this kind of left and right brain idea. Of course, you can say that the maths exists for predicting, orbital velocities, etc. And within this theory that the Earth is this big, the moon is that big, you can predict how you would get from here to the moon doing slingshots, blah blah blah. But it's just plainly obvious to anyone who really looks into it and just spends time researching all the elements of it, including the human element, the way these heroes were reacting when they came back from, humankind's greatest achievement. It's just so obvious. And again, so with the human element is what solidifies the flat Earth in a lot of people's minds, of course. So you can't, of course, you can't come up with alternative formula or distances and things like that, or say how far the sun really is, anything like that. Nobody knows. We don't know. So it comes down to the human element. What is it about humans that could mean that all that was fabricated, the moon landings and even all the theories and things about our heliocentric model? People can be compromised. and we like to have answers. We all inside us, every single one of us, has this burning desire for some answers as to, why am I here? What's going on? When you're a kid, you're discovering new things all the time. You lie in the grass and you watch ants, or you trip out on colours and patterns and things like that. And you could be told all sorts of things about how the world works, and you would maybe accept it or still even question it, depending on your own experience. But when things are repeated over and over and over again, whether it's at school, on TV, in the movies, by your parents, just society in general, then of course it just becomes your reality. And to even start to examine what leads you to believe your reality is what it is something very few of us do. It's not easy to look. I mean, I'm sure all of us have habits, thoughts, emotions that we maybe know we shouldn't have or shouldn't do. We know it instinctively, the difference between right and wrong. We do know it. But we are very, very smart at turning on defense mechanisms to not face these things, these issues. So it is quite frightening to start questioning your reality. And if you look in, when people that look into flat Earth, I mean, it's not about making a choice or swapping one belief for another belief. We say flat Earth because once you have broken free from the idea of heliocentrism, I mean, the simple fact that we can see further than we're supposed to, given the maths, there you go, start there, and start working it out. A lot of people come along and they demand, well, if, it's like this, why isn't it like that? And demand, and of course in their head they've got the heliocentric model, they've got the answer already. I know the answer that they've got as well. We all know the answers that we've already got. We all got taught the same thing. We all know what we're supposed to know. So there's very little point in making videos or coming along and making comments on video with the idea that you have something to tell the flat earther or teach them, or it's just ridiculous. And of course we'll often respond and get predictable responses as well. And this is the thing, we can, you start telling other people about what you're finding out, and the reactions most of the time across the board are very, very similar. And this is what leads people to understand that the human element that's involved, this attachment to the ball, as I said, it does enter the territory of religion, because it's given you some answers. The heliocentric model gives you some answers to an extent about how you came to be here. So we can kind of have some kind of satisfaction and feel a bit secure in that. But of course, the whole thing is all about us being in a very chaotic universe, and everything's left to chance. However, there is some security in this knowledge that we have, and it is a belief, because anyone can repeat the same old line about star parallax and how scientists, I've never heard any names, all I've heard is the same mantra repeated, that about the distance being so great that the parallax is very limited, and there you go, that's it. That's the reason that stars seem to be fixed in a position when they're supposed to be millions and millions of miles apart from each other. We know the responses. We you know, where's the edge? Show me a picture of the edge. Of course, you know, if you're trying to fit the ball Earth into this flat Earth idea, then you feel there has to be a limit. And again, you know, of course the circle is perfect, isn't it? Because it's never ending. And you can just go round and round it. But then, yeah, where's the edge? No, I mean, really simple, you know, however it all started, no one's ever going to give us the answers to that. But the way we see things on this Earth is layers of density. So once you break away from the heliocentric model, and, you know, again, things just as they are, layers of density. So many things going through my head, so many things I want to say, so many explanations I want to give to all those people that come along and kind of really want to pick a fight. That wasn't the idea of doing flat Earth videos. It's wanting to share this amazing feeling of breaking free from this chaotic heliocentric model. Where do you start? Where do you begin? Where do you try to explain to someone who's coming across flat Earth for the first time, or laughing or ridiculing it? What do you do to get them thinking? Just to get them listening and not automatically regurgitating the stuff we all know, we've been taught already or looked into. You know, a couple of years ago, a whole bunch of flat earthers were looking into the experiments that have been done and are constantly, you know, Cavendish experiment and the Aries failure and Nicholson Morley. Gosh, we've researched all this stuff, Eratosthenes, all these things I didn't know 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Didn't know these names. But I don't claim to be an expert, but it's like looking through, you know, really wanting to know, okay, someone says the Earth's flat, right, okay, where did they get that from? And so, well, hang on a minute. So you start looking, and you want to find out for yourself how you can argue it either way. So you start doing the research into and of course, you know, it's great to have Google, but that doesn't mean you do a one thing keyword search and pick the first thing on the first page that comes to you. No, you've usually got, you know, 10 pages deep and do special formatted searches for the information that you want to get. And after a while you see a pattern, you see, you know, institutionalized science making assumptions and a few heroes, although there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands brilliant minds that have contributed to science and given us wonderful technology, including what we're doing right now is broadcasting to the world with video. I mean, goodness me, it was only when I was a kid, this was just something that we watched on Buck Rogers or something, you know. It was just one day. And that's the thing, you know, where is space exploration now? Oh, we've gone to Mars. I mean, you really, if you are faced with a photograph of the moon and someone points out that it's, you know, the mountain in the background or the hill in the background is exactly the same as the hill in the background of this picture with a bunch of NASA people looking at some desert, you know, that's it. There's a whole bunch of things like that, coincidences. They couldn't go, they just couldn't go. It's as simple as that. Whether it's because the air just thins out and rockets don't work in a vacuum, or whether there's a firmament, but I don't, you know, after much thought and research, I don't believe there's a vacuum of space. Take Halley's Comet, for example. If space is empty and, you know, we are whizzing through space, but we're not being affected by any kind of resistance because space is a vacuum, then how come Halley's Comet creates a trail as it comes around? What force is pushing against Halley's Comet if it's going through a vacuum? You might have all sorts of explanations about the sun making bits fly off and stuff like that, but I mean, yeah, it comes around, it's been coming around for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, and it doesn't run out of the stuff that it's belching out. I mean, so okay, we might have some theories about what's going on there or what it might be, but we don't know. We don't know. Does it prove the heliocentric model? No, maybe something like Halley's Comet is going around the entire flat Earth, and it comes around, you know, once every, I can't remember how many years, 70 years or something? Maybe it's just done a trip around, maybe that's a marker or something of you know, the expanse of our flat, infinite Earth. We get, you see, even flat earthers, even you know, me included, we are still stuck in many ways on this kind of artificial framework that's been put in place, whether it's time zones, longitudes and latitudes, talking about the North Pole, the South Pole. Okay, there are magnetic deviations. But, you know, right from the beginning we've been given this map with the ice circle, and I'm kind of never really committed to a particular model. As far as the sun and moon go and how they go around, that's fine. It seems okay to me. But yeah, when it comes to ice walls and things like that, maybe Antarctica is just, you know, a continent or a piece of land that's been measured up to a certain point, and then you know, we have our sun going around and kind of marking our territory, as it were. But we still, even the flat earthers, we're all still seeing these boundaries, and I think we need to get away from that. Just, you know, it's when my mind blew open, when the prison bars in the mind just fell away. I remember that it was a moment, it was a distinct moment after much research into flat Earth. Suddenly, boom! Everything it was almost a physical feeling. It was, but you could sense these. It's like this wall was here, and it just fell away. And this is why flat earthers talk about feeling free, because you really, really are. You're free from this kind of artificial construct that only exists in our heads. It's only in our heads. And you are free to imagine and perceive and wonder about alternative ideas based on very real science, magnetism, just electricity, vibration, frequency. You look at the stars, thank you for all those people that are looking up at the stars and filming them, because they're showing us that what we see in the sky is sacred. In the star patterns and stuff is sacred geometry, is the same kind of patterns you see with, I can't remember what you call it, sonoresonance or whatever. Basically a certain frequency, a tone of a certain frequency will create a predictable pattern in sand or rice or whatever on a vibrating plate. And we see these patterns in the stars. We see them embossed in old churches as well. There is a connection. There surely is a connection. Tesla said, look at everything in terms of frequencies. And it is, we can see now, we've seen the Hutchinson effect and things like that, how frequencies can hold something in space. And, so okay, we hear about the voice of God. Not some long-haired, bearded guy up there in the sky, it's a lot more esoteric than that. So I wanted to tell a story about in Thailand. I've said it many times, but this is it. The shape of the earth doesn't define one's existence. I mean, daily interactions with people and living next to or among the spirit world is a very, very real thing here. Karma is your doing, and your doing has consequences, good and bad. And of course, how you deal with those consequences is also your karma, your doing. So, to wonder about, to kind of make the excuse that, well, God doesn't exist because he lets terrible things happen in this world. Well, no, the point is we as human beings have to understand how we allow terrible things to happen in this world. We allow ourselves to be led, to be cajoled, to be deceived. We deceive ourselves on a daily basis, whether it's because you want to go and buy a packet of chocolates or a packet of cigarettes. I deceive myself every day thinking that I need to have a cigarette. I enjoy it, so I make excuses to smoke. So at least being aware of how you deceive yourself on a daily basis, on a moment-by-moment basis, and this is something that Buddhism aims to help you practice. It's not a religion, it's a science of the mind, in which the first thing you're supposed to do is focus on the thoughts you have and your physical and mental reaction to those thoughts. Where are the thoughts coming from? Why do you feel angry? Why do you feel happy about something? You examine them. Just try. Anyone can try. Try meditating. Try sitting still and focusing on your breathing for 5 minutes. Bet you can't do it. I can't. Not many people can at all. 5 minutes. Just try sitting still, focusing on your breathing for 5 minutes. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's ridiculous, that's stupid, why should I do that? I've got too many things to do. You're not even trying to understand anything about yourself if you're not going to take the time to study yourself. So this is what Buddhism does. It tells you to study yourself, and there's, of course, there's the confidence. There's no need to preach about what happens to you, because we all find out on our own once you start to study yourself and how you react to things. So you breathe, you focus on your breathing, and then a thought pops into your head, whatever it might be, something you did or said at work, or something someone said to you, or and you'll notice an emotion, an emotional feeling will attach itself to that thought or rise up because of that thought, and you will also notice a change in your breathing. So these are thoughts coming out of nowhere that affect our physical being. And eventually those thoughts manifest themselves as things, so if you want to talk about the Big Bang and everything coming from nothing and trying to explain away nothing, you can't. That's not science, is it? But if you kind of accept, or even not accept, just consider that everything you have around you, whether it's people, things, jobs, debt, whatever, is a physical manifestation of a thought or a desire or a wish that you had, an inspiration. We, so in many ways we are the creators. But that's not to become egotist, that's to put ourselves on a pedestal. A creator of something has great responsibility to do something positive with that creation. Create it in the right way. We can create good and we can create evil. We can manifest these things. Where do the thoughts come from? Do we channel them? Do they originate from just ourselves, random stuff? No. We are programmed by everything. Just the same as an animal, if it has a bad experience when it's young, it will be afraid of those particular things as it grows up, and it will always be weary and wary of them. So we have to look at how, in one sense, we are animals that go through conditioning, just like any other animal. But we've also, just like other animals, we've also got natural instincts, So you might have a dog that scratches away at the floor before it lies down. Why does it do that? I mean, it's just a natural instinct that it would dig in the ground to make a kind of cool hole for itself. And it will do it still on a hard stone floor. It's just something dogs do. And there are many, many things that humans just do, and one of them is making excuses for not looking within and asking questions of ourselves and our own beliefs. That's the wonderful thing, we've got the ability to do that. So yeah, Flat Earth comes along and it gets pointed out to you that, there are no real pictures from space, or the pictures we have can be explained or debunked. You go, yeah, wow. Never thought about that. And then, the horizon's always at eye level, no matter how high you go, and we can see further than we're supposed to see. Really? Well, how far are we supposed to be able to see? And then you find out the maths, and you get it confirmed, and you look again, and you da-da-da-da-da. And it's just ultimately, if you look at it honestly, you instinctively know that what we've been told is not true. So how deep does the lie go? How deep does it go? Well, from the chocolate bar, deceiving yourself to have a chocolate bar or a cigarette, to the politician, allowing him or herself to be deceived in order to get a position of power, And so it goes on. We're all human. Can't help ourselves. Just like the dog can't help trying to dig away on a hard surface. So, the story I wanted to tell today was about, there's a TV program here. There are a lot of TV programs and radio programs that are all about, self-development and the Buddhist way and things like that. So, you don't get that in the UK or in Europe or the US. You get all this kind of, pop culture, which is consumer culture. But here, you often tune in to hear of course, there's that too. There's all the old mobile phone thing, and TV bot stuff and distractions and everything. There's all that. But there's also a very healthy dose of, how to follow the middle path. And superstition and, ghosts and spirits, it's all totally accepted. And again, that's not a religious thing. It's not, being Buddhist isn't about following a religion. It's about understanding, or just that we are human and we do certain things. And we have a place, and everything has its place. That's another fallacy of evolution. If things evolved, then the natural balance and the natural order of everything would be lost, and so everything would collapse. So there you go, boom. Intelligent design is obvious. It's de facto. You can't deny it, because everything works until us humans come along and interfere with it. Unless we're the kind of human that really integrates with nature. People who live in the forests, they understand that they've got to move on they can't stay in one place too long, because they end up damaging the environment. So they 6 months they spend somewhere and they burn their house down, they move on, just to let the ground replenish itself. They live in harmony. Maybe our job here is to be gardeners. Maybe that's just what we're supposed to do. Borders and things like that, they don't exist in nature. So there's a TV program here about one particular spirit medium who gets called up. People call him up to come and visit if they've got some issues. And one particular story just the other day was that a young man in his 20s was working, and he managed to buy a house, and he and his sister and his parents were living in this house. And he had a car crash. Died. Violent death. Sudden death. And so the parents, they carried on living in the house that the son had bought for a little while, but they didn't ever enter the room. And they wanted to sell the house. But they put it on the market, and people would make phone calls, and they would get a man's voice telling them the house wasn't for sale. The mother walked into the room one time after the son's death and could swear he was in the bed. Neighbours, friends kept saying they were seeing the guy just hanging around where he usually did. And this is perfectly acceptable as something that might happen if someone has died suddenly and they still had some huge concern, something they wanted to tell their relatives or their loved ones, or just something left unfinished in this existence. So they called up this spirit medium from this show to come around. And he said, yeah. He said, look, and so he gets in contact with the spirit, doesn't have to do anything special, doesn't have to do any seances or anything like that. He's just one of those guys that just people, spirits can talk to him. And he said, yeah, there's, he wants you to go in the room, and he's worried about, just have a look in the cupboard. And they go through this cupboard, which they hadn't touched since, and they weren't planning on taking with them if they were able to sell the house, on some old cupboard. Found a big box of cash in the cupboard. And the guy had been saving up the money and wanted it was his intention to give that money to his mother as a gift. And this is quite normal in Thailand for if you're the eldest son or daughter and your parents have raised you, you then kind of reciprocate that. Is that the right word? Pay them back. They might put you through school and things, but there's this huge respect for the parents. Although it's our natural instinct to see our kids do well and do what we can for them, Thailand still has a society where the parents are highly respected and revered for Father's Day and Mother's Day here are totally different things to what you might be used to in the West. So yeah, and then after that, okay, the boy, the son, or the boy's spirit went on its way in peace. It's just an example of how there's so much more to life than we can really imagine, and there is a limit to the answers we can get. But ultimately this is accepted in Buddhist cultures and many, many other Asian cultures that you die in this physical existence. You don't just, it's not nothing that you go to. There is something or some place or some level, frequency, whatever, a rebirth that happens. Life has its cycle, and for some reason it's essential. It's part of the way things are. We have this experience, and we come to this designed environment to have an experience. Make of it what you will. It's just a game, really. So, this is it. People who get wound up and upset or feel they've got to point out the fallacies in flat earthers' thinking are reacting based on their conditioning. I don't want to say brainwashed, but just, life is a psyop, and every single day, every single moment of the day, if you study Buddhist practices, the idea is to catch yourself, and you train your brain, train your mind to catch yourself, catch those thoughts, catch those reactions, catch those emotions, examine them, study them, and just the process of studying them and studying your own mind is a learning process, and then there are steps that people go through, people's minds go through towards enlightenment. it's a science. You can poo-poo it as much as you like, but the very act of examining yourself and your own beliefs sets things in motion. You might get into it for a while. You might go on some kind of retreat, have a week of it, meditation, self-reflection, breathing exercises, what have you. Go on, get on with life and do your thing. I mean, it's also accepted, you know, monks are monks and lay people are lay people. They've got their purpose, they've got things to do. It's, you know, it's just the way things are. But anyone who is prepared to examine their own mind will eventually go through a process that leads to some kind of enlightenment. Some kind of understanding that no matter what you're told, no matter what millions of other people think, it's okay to have your understanding, your thoughts on the way things are. Based on the things you see and experience. So, just if you're new to the flat earth and you're wanting to pound the keyboard and explain science to someone who seems to have just completely ignored everything we know, just take a step back. Just hold off. Just hold off. And just look at yourself and your mind and how your reaction. And of course, this is another thing, isn't it? Let's suppose that the powers that be, whoever they are, they found out that there's no way off this rock. These are the same people that, you know, feed off a debt-based society or consumerism, power, what have you. You know, imagine if so that we were all stuck here in this enclosed environment. There's no way out, or that's how it's perceived. And so the people who have been perpetuating lies for whatever reasons they may be will have to keep on trying their best to convince people not to look inwards, look up there, look into space. We're going to Mars. Let's get off we're polluting the place. The politics is all up the creek, and so we just, everything's a mess. We just got to get away from here. And of course, that's a great fantasy to attach to. This idea that we just leave behind the crap that we've created. But you can't. You can't. You've got to keep house. So much to say. Sometimes it feels like so little time in which to do it. But I just just an appeal, really. It's just an appeal to anyone that's coming along to the flat earth and wanting to, fight. It's not a fight. It's not a contest. It's not a battle of wits. It's a sharing. A sharing of knowledge that you cannot have until you are prepared to stop and think about who